Hello there and a very good evening to all our listeners. This is episode 13 of the News First Studio 7 podcast. For the News First team, I'm Jamal Ratnayaka. Today is the 23rd of June 2021. It was certainly a very eventful day for Sri Lanka, especially in Parliament. So before I go into the news in detail, let me give you a breakdown of what you can expect throughout today's episode. We have very interesting news from Parliament, from a protest or a tense situation arising in Parliament to Ranil Wickramasinghe swearing in as an MP in Parliament. Also, we have news on the vaccine front in Sri Lanka's vaccination drive. We also have tragic news from more turtle deaths being reported from across the island and much more. So without further ado, let's get into the news. Up first, in news from Parliament, a tense situation was reported in Parliament today when opposition members representing the Samagi Jana Balawegaya moved to the well in Parliament to protest against the recent hike in fuel prices and several other issues. We know how parliamentarians representing the Samagi Jana Balawegaya yesterday staged a protest with a vehicle procession where they had enlisted several vehicles including backhoes and trucks, and they made their way to the parliamentary complex in those vehicles, and today they made their objections clear at the parliamentary chambers, and the members of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya were seen holding placards and voicing their objection while the parliamentary session was underway. In another interesting story from Parliament, former Prime Minister and the leader of the United National Party, Ranil Wickramasinghe, was sworn in as a Member of Parliament before Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardena earlier today. Incidentally, this is the fifth time Ranil Wickramasinghe is entering Parliament. As you know, in the general election last year, the United National Party failed to garner a single seat from the public mandate, however, were allotted a parliamentary seat through the national list, and thereafter Ranil Wickramasinghe was nominated as the parliamentarian or the member who should represent the UNP in Parliament. And thereafter, speaking in Parliament today, Ranil Wickramasinghe said the rich have been given relief by the government while the poor have been left to starve. He also said Sri Lanka's only option to address its current economic crisis is to re-engage with the International Monetary Fund. He also slammed the COVID-19 task force, saying that it was a failure and it cannot move forward, while questioning as to why the cabinet of ministers were not empowered to handle the COVID-19 crisis. Also in Parliament today, a supplementary estimate of 200 billion rupees was debated. Parliamentary approval was sought for this sum to fund the vaccination program and other programs to curb the spread of the COVID-19 virus.
News First.
Let me quickly draw your attention to the vaccine rollout in Sri Lanka. The pharmaceutical giant Pfizer says it will provide 78,000 doses of its COVID-19 vaccines to Sri Lanka in the month of July. Speaking regarding this matter, State Minister Professor Channa Jayasumana said Pfizer vaccine doses will also be used as a second jab for those who have been administered the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Speaking further, Professor Channa Jayasumana says Sri Lanka will also receive the Moderna vaccine doses via the US Global Vaccination Donation Program, and these too will be used to inoculate those who have been administered the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. In essence, Sri Lankan authorities have decided to administer the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines to those who have already been inoculated with the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
News First.
Now, police spokesperson Senior DIG Ajit Rohana has confirmed that it is an offence for anyone who is not in the military to wear or be in the possession of a military uniform. He said by doing so, one is committing an offence punishable as per the Penal Code and the Sri Lanka Army Act. Why did SDIG Ajit Rohana make these comments? The police spokesperson made these comments following a News First inquiry over the presence of camo-clad Chinese nationals present at the Chinese joint venture site in the southern province, more accurately in the Tissa Maharama Wavar. These uniforms were very much similar to those worn by soldiers in China's People's Liberation Army.
News First.
In more tragic news from the Express Pearl tragedy, 6 dead sea turtles were discovered from several areas of the island, including Putlam and Moratua, while 3 dead dolphins had washed ashore at the Kalmunay beach. Now, Sri Lankan authorities are currently in the process of obtaining compensation for this disaster, and to give you a bit of a backdrop, Suez Canal authorities has reached an agreement in principle with insurers over a $550 million USD compensation for the grounding of the Ever Given vessel in March. We know the Ever Given container ship blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days in March. That hindered maritime activities throughout the Suez Canal, and now authorities have reached a principal agreement, or an agreement in principle, to obtain $550 million US as compensation. Sri Lankan authorities are yet to reach a solid agreement on the compensation over the Express Pearl disaster.
News first.
Finally, in some exciting news for cricket fans out there, the first T20 international game between Sri Lanka and England is set to get underway at 11 p.m. Sri Lankan time at Sophia Gardens in Cardiff. The touring Sri Lanka team is being led by Kusal Janit Pereira and will play 3 T20 internationals and 3 ODIs against England. Until now, the teams have faced each other in 9 occasions at T20s, with England clinching victory in 5, while Sri Lanka have won 4 of those encounters. And that's a wrap of the News First Studio 7 podcast. Today's episode was episode 13. Today is the 23rd of June 2021. I am Jaimal Ratnaik for the News First team. Remember to stay safe, take care, and have yourself a good night.